Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor, a series that focuses on the design and decor of the stories that excite us and ignite our imagination, where we discuss the collaboration between set decorators and production designers and hear first-hand accounts of how these works of art came to be, from their inception, ideas on a page, to completion, when we get to sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm David Smith SDSA, and today I'm excited to be joined by set decorator Patricia Cuccia SDSA and production designer Martha Sparrow for a conversation about their beautiful collaborative work creating a new version of Gilead as seen through a young girl's eyes in the Hulu original series, The Testaments. Patricia and Martha, thank you for joining me. Patricia, how did you get onto this project?
Well, Martha and I had worked together on, it was a shoot in Toronto, and we knew each other. We'd worked together earlier on as well, but in a different capacity. So when Martha got this, she called and offered it to me, which I was really excited. I was working in Prague at the time, and so I ran out and got the book and read it in one afternoon, and then I'm such a huge fan of Margaret Atwood, so I was completely thrilled.
Excellent. And Martha, I know that you had been an art director on *HANDMAID'S TALE, correct?
Yes, I joined *HANDMAID'S TALE on season 2 and worked on seasons 2, 3, and 4. So I knew the whole creative team very well.
Was it weird, Martha, for you to go then to The Testaments, or was it a continuation of the same world?
Yeah, creatively, I mean, what continued from *HANDMAID'S TALE, first of all, the people. Warren Littlefield as producer, Mike Barker as one of the producing directors, and as the sort of core of the creative team. Aesthetically, we did bring some things from *HANDMAID'S TALE, things that were kind of set up as part of this larger world of Gilead. But we did treat it as a new series. We wanted to create a new look for the show. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the book itself is from a very different perspective than The Handmaid's Tale. In The Handmaid's Tale, we're seeing the world from the perspective of June, who's a handmaid. And as a handmaid, she's sort of imprisoned. But in The Testaments, it's actually written from the perspective of 3 different people. And so the show begins from the perspective of Agnes, who's a young girl just on the cusp of womanhood. And so we're seeing the whole world that we kind of set up from *Handmaid's Tale through completely different eyes. And that really changes the way that it looks.
Patricia, did you have it? Was it difficult to catch up and get yourself into the universe, or did it happen fairly easily for you?
Well, I watched the entire series, and so that was quite the endeavor, but it helped immensely. And once I had done that, then I really understood. I mean, then I'm looking at the show in a different way, knowing that we're going to be in Gilead as well, but in a different town. And also, as Martha said, there was all those hits of red. It was going to be different. The girls were going to be wearing plum. And also it was because the girls are kind of very content in their own world, and they're the well-off children. So it was going to be it was going to feel lighter and brighter, I think.
How to divide between locations and stage work?
Well, the first thing we did was nail down our 2 key exterior locations, which were the house where Agnes lives, the Mackenzie house, and the school where a lot of the story takes place. When we found those locations, I mean, originally, I think we definitely wanted to shoot a lot of studio stage work. And so we did build sets, but these locations also provided a lot of interesting connection between inside and outside. And in visiting them early on with the director, we decided we wanted to try to shoot some of that work on location as well. The entrance to the school, for example, there's some great shots that go right from the outside through the door, and then we see the statue of Lydia, who originally that statue was scripted as being outside. And, when we found the location and we found that relationship between the indoors and the outdoors, we decided to shoot that on location. And then the same with the house. We really wanted to create a sense of freedom for Agnes, and a sense that she was kind of in a place where it was a very rural setting and very lovely. And so she had these views to the outdoors. So at the location, the one we found has a lot of big windows looking out onto this sweeping landscape. And so we really embraced that and therefore wanted to shoot some of that on location. We ended up replicating some of the interiors on stage, and it actually worked out quite well. But yeah, you can see here, we wanted to see those views out of the windows. I think in Handmaid's Tale, there was a lot more sort of backlit windows, and we really wanted to try to change that for the perspective of Agnes.
So what we're looking at now, then those are stage sets, or is that location?
No, that's on location, although, we've changed the decor
Right.
pretty much entirely. But that kitchen, when we first saw it, it's a very Tuscan kitchen, which wasn't sort of in keeping with the look that we wanted. So we made some modifications to bring in a bit more contrast and some darker woods and just the sort of more natural elements, and then some black accents, which was one of the characteristics we brought to the entire house. It was sort of an idea around Paula, who's the mother, stepmother figure. We wanted her to have this slight sophistication, but also like a little bit of harshness. So we brought in these black accents throughout.
I want to come back to the house in a minute, but let's start with the school. When I first saw the first couple of episodes, because I did binge watch the whole thing, they gave me a link to go ahead and see all 10 episodes. I thought for sure that the school had to be a location, but then I saw that you had some drawings, and of course that you had built the class. Tell me how much of the school you did build.
We built the dining hall, which is a double height space with a mezzanine. We built a lobby space, again, a double height space that has a kind of conversation area and a staircase that goes up to a mezzanine. And then running off that, there's a couple of corridors and a classroom and a bathroom. Originally, we were going to build also Lydia's office on stage, but there was a room on location that worked quite well because it had a view to the front door, which seemed like a good thing for Lydia to be watching, keeping her eye on. But yeah, this space here we built. And I think, initially we were looking at different school locations, and we saw this dining hall that we liked on location that had a certain scale to it. And Mike said, "Oh, we can't build something like this." I said, "Why not?" So when I read episode 5, which takes place a lot in this space, it had scripted a kind of ballroom that had commanders looking out over the girls. And I thought, well, we can make our dining hall double height and have that mezzanine there, and then that whole episode can take place in the dining hall and in the school. So I modified the initial design to fit that script. And then we had this great space that we really made use of.
When I saw the first episode, I was just blown away by the fact that you had so many matching chairs. And that's why I thought perhaps it was a location. But how did you find the chairs for the dining hall and the chairs for the classroom?
We had to have everything custom made, but so all of the chairs, there was a company, they're Mennonites, and they do all this beautiful woodwork, and they had choices of chairs. So Martha and I looked at them together, and we did pick some that would be perfect for the dining room, some that would be perfect for, say, a classroom. They had some areas where they're doing work. They do their needlepoint, and it's a little circular area in one of the classrooms, and another room where they were playing music, which we did see briefly, but at the time we thought we might see the music room more, and we picked different chairs for that one. So we ordered them, and had to wait. And luckily we were able to get them all in time. And then we also had the tables by a different vendor built all of the tables custom for us as well. So it was great because Martha got to select the stain color and things like that. That really helped making it all feel so perfect, because the same thing with the flooring, we had to have that herringbone wood floor built put in, and Martha was able to select the stain for that as well.
And so how long did it take? What did you order, like 48 chairs for the dining room, or did you go to 60?
Oh, we had, was it 90, Martha?
96, I think.
96, yeah. And 12 10-foot tables or 12 12-foot tables. Yeah, a lot of stuff. And it took probably, I mean, we were really lucky because the person with the chairs, one of the chairs we picked, he had a huge stock, but it was in the US, it was down in Indiana. So he was able to send a truck to pick those up and then brought those over. So those were fairly quick. And then he had to make a few. So that really helped that he did have a warehouse down in the US that we could access.
We had them stained, but not finished with the final coat, so that we could then do a little bit more aging on. Sometimes when you buy a wood chair like that, they put such a thick sort of protective coating on them that you can't give them a nice patina. So we got them sent up to us with the first step done, but not the final step. And then we had our scenic department age them and then do the final coat.
And doing this, how much time did you have to do all of this, Patricia?
I'm feeling like we had about 10 weeks prep. Is that right, Martha? It wasn't a lot.
It wasn't a lot, but we were lucky. We managed to push the dining hall back in the schedule a little bit. We started with episode 3 actually, and that was just owing to one of the actors who's in episode 3 not being available later in the schedule. So it meant that it bought us a little bit more time, but I think in total we maybe had 13 weeks from when we started to when we actually shot that space, which was incredible what the crew pulled off.
Right. Always. No matter how much time and money, it always is, it gets done, and somehow it's never enough, but it always happens, which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, I mean, my construction coordinator said to me, I've done some big sets in the past, but this one takes the cake. So that was
Well, that's good to keep growing and growing. And then I noticed immediately the curtains, which the windows are huge, and the pattern on the curtains, was that silk screened?
Yeah, they were all printed.
All printed.
So
But
the
in the
pattern,
house.
yeah, the pattern was designed with Martha, with a graphic designer, and you see that pattern throughout, and then we had them printed. So that was interesting because the first run that came out, the pattern was running a little bit crooked. So they had to redo them. But it was really tricky for them to do it because of the stretch of the fabric. I mean, normally they would print on their own. They have several fabrics that they offer up, and none of them were what we wanted because we wanted it to be a little bit sheer. We also wanted it to feel really organic, and that, everything is milled and done all with natural fibers in this world. So because the fabric we picked may have been just a little bit, it was harder for them to work with, but it did work out in the end. And they were quite fantastic. I agree. They're really beautiful.
And how many windows did you have?
Well, if you're looking in the dining hall, wasn't those curtains. The dining hall were blinds, and those were so long and high. So that was interesting. But then we do see the blinds in some of the classrooms at the location. And then the drapes we put in Lydia's office and the classroom that we built. And then there were some in the large foyer, also a stage build.
Those windows, that was one of the things that we sort of took a cue from the location. So on the facade of the front of the school, you can see those windows, and the sort of the combination of the larger one in the middle and then the two that are on each side on the back of the dining hall, that actually matches the location. So if you're at the back of the school on location and you look back towards the back facade, it actually would match the dining hall. And, that location had such a nice scale to it. One of the first things that the director talked to me about before we started designing, was wanting the spaces to feel overscaled so that the girls felt very small.
Right.
And, that's one of the things we love so much when we walked into that location is that the ceilings, I think they were actually 16 feet on the ground floor. And the doors were, actually, there weren't doors. We had to build all the doors on location. But the doorways were huge. So it diminished the scale of the actors, which was what we wanted to do. So those blinds in the dining hall, they kind of were in a bit of a fixed position, but we could pull them down if we needed to, or if the DP
Someone
wanted to.
had to go up with the crane to adjust.
Yeah, we had to get a lift in to adjust the blinds, basically.
How many classrooms did you do? Because I remember seeing a bit of the music room and the room, the weaving room or the needlework room, right?
We had one of the early scenes, which was so great for showing off the set, was Agnes is showing Daisy around the school and she sort of points to all these classrooms. So some of the rooms that we dressed were just kind of for that scene in the beginning. And so we would dress kind of a full room, but you see it from the doorway. On location, we had the art classroom, we had a music classroom. And then in studio, we had the weaving classroom, which then at different points in the script, we redressed for other rooms, but we built one classroom and then repurposed it. Luckily in a school, the rooms might all look the same, and then it's just a matter of what's in them and how they get laid out. So we had a version of it that had desks lined up where they did their sexual education class with a chalkboard. And then at one point they had a corrections scene, and we actually did that in the same room as well. But we changed the treatment on the windows. They wanted it to look slightly more like an area of the school that's closed off to students. So we did a scenic treatment on the windows to make it feel a little scarier, a little bit more like an unused room.
How easy is it to source this amount of furniture in Canada?
Yeah, well, we do have prop houses, but they're nothing like the ones in Los Angeles. Like if we were in Los Angeles, we would have been able to get a lot of those pieces and rent them, but we can't in Toronto. There is something, but we're basically shopping it. And so it's a very organic process because you can't necessarily design exactly the look, but we did build some custom pieces. So for instance, in the living room in the Mackenzie house, Martha had designed a certain look that she wanted there. And so we went out and we ended up custom building the sofa because she really wanted that shape.
That's the little curved one with
Yeah, I think it's a Moe sofa or something. And so we changed the dimensions. We had to make it a little different because our house, it was a larger scale, and that sofa was quite small in real life, a little too small for that room. It would have looked funny. So we redid it. But then a lot of the other pieces were just based on the look that Martha had designed. And we just kept with that and kept looking, and we were finding great things. And it is really fun when you do it that way too, because you'll come across some fantastic piece that maybe originally wasn't exactly what thought we were looking for, but then suddenly it's this incredible find. So it's really nice to work that way. And then of course we ordered, a certain amount online, and
Yeah, Patty and I work so well together, I think, because I'll put together a mood board and, sort of an idea based on a character, but I really rely on her to bring those ideas to it. And she'll find a great thing and say, oh, but what about this piece? And then maybe that'll change the direction of things. And I'm always open to that. So yeah, I usually start with a direction, but sometimes Patty and I sit down and have a conversation and just sort of talk about ideas and then go from there.
So on stage, you built some of the interiors for the Mackenzie house, and the bedroom. Was that all on stage, or was that a location?
We built the bedroom and designed that completely from scratch. That was not based on location at all. The parlor on began on location. The director really, really wanted it connected to the outside. He wanted to move the camera from the front door inside and then reveal the parlor for several of the different sequences. But as we got into the schedule, it became quite difficult to go to the location. There was availability issues with it. We did have a kind of season-long deal with them, but they also had other bookings. It was very hard to work around, and even, getting out there for one scene when, you kind of need to build a day became tricky. So we decided to replicate the parlor and the whole sort of front entrance way on stage.
And we were thrilled about that because they had an Airbnb. So we had to redress the entire place. I mean, they allowed a few things that we could leave our light fixtures, but we would change some of the drapes, all of the furniture back to their look. They luckily were okay with the wallpaper, but they had to look at it all and decide if they liked it. So we did that several times. So then when we had our new build on the stage, it was really nice. We didn't have to keep going back and forth.
And what about the mural, the wallpaper mural in Agnes's bedroom? Is that something that was manufactured or designed by you?
Yeah, it's something that we hand painted, actually. I had a graphic designer, Teresa Shane, on the show from very, very early on, and she also did the patterns they see at the school, but she designed that mural based on, a kind of some conversation and reference, but also just sometimes, she'll just bring great ideas to the table too. But we wanted to, within the house, have this kind of pastoral feel. And there's something about that mural that has also kind of a storybook quality to it, but it gives a lot of depth to the space. And I wanted to make sure that I kept it kind of achievable. So it's simplistic in detail, but there's 3 layers essentially of color so that you get this sense of depth disappearing into the forest. And I showed it to the scenic department. They said, "Oh, yeah, no problem. We can hand paint that." So we had some, we output it onto transparency, and they projected it on the wall, and then they just painted it onto the set.
You know what I really liked about the bedroom is when they made that mural, there was also, depending on the lighting, it could feel a little spooky, which I thought was good because it's not really a great world that they're in, but they are kind of enclosed into their little fantasy. But it was nice because every once in a while you would see it and it would look kind of creepy. And that was good because there's definitely some creepy things that happen, as you know. But yeah, we had so much fun. So, starting with that beautiful mural, and then I really liked, we loved the idea of playing with different pinks. In the bathroom, it was a bit more of a blush. The other thing is that early on, there was a lot test done.
Camera tilts? Yeah.
The color test.
Oh, the LUT. Yeah, the LUT.
So we could see how the color, and it was really interesting to see with our lighting, how these colors were going to look. So it was really nice. We had this range of pinks that were actually a little bit blushy, and the purple was interesting as well. Some of it did go towards a little bit of a gray, but we mixed those together, and then we found that fantastic canopy bed, and we talked about doing some lace. I mean, I think Martha originally had conceptualized that it would have lace, so we found the right lace. And then on her windows, we have that beautiful cotton lace with the pattern, which is on the shears, which is the Cooper lace, as we all know and love. That beautiful, it just films so beautifully. And then we just went with a solid color pink. But it was definitely a real fun, a lot of fun working on that set. And her toys, everything, that dollhouse is spectacular. I helped to decorate the interior, but Martha designed it and our construction team built it. And we found this great table to put it on. And I mean, yes, it was definitely a fun time because we were doing, every girl's dream bedroom, but it had to feel, there's no mess. Everything is so perfect in their world. So that was a little different. It didn't feel like a normal girl's bedroom. It felt like the perfect room with the perfect child wearing the perfect clothing. And it it was very, very interesting working that way. It's not the way we usually work, as you know. I mean, usually there's tons of mess and clutter and the lived in feel that's really making it feel so real. But in their world, this is real.
Yeah, it's very magazine aesthetic, the whole house, actually.
Sure.
Yeah.
The whole world of Gilead is a bit like that, isn't it? It's very controlled. At least that's what the impression that I got from seeing the series. But also, I love the bathroom in the girls' school. Was that a set?
Yeah, we built that, designed and built that.
And Patty, how many lavatories did you buy?
I think we had something like, is it 5 stalls in there? And then we had the counter in the center with the custom design mirrors. I know in the last time when we were talking about the bathroom set, I forgot to mention how much work was those brass pieces up above. All of that was, I mean, I can remember the assistant decorator finding all of that brass and custom ordering he did all that custom work with somebody, and then we made it work with Martha's beautiful designed mirrors. So
Yeah, those stalls were quite a complicated design in some ways because we wanted, of course, things to be wild, to have panels that could come out and behind each of the toilets, you can wild the wall to get the camera back there. The ceiling wilds as well, so you can get top shots. You know, setting up a show for season 1, you just want to provide as many possibilities as you can for different directors coming in.
How much of the show is LED as far as all the fixtures go?
the fixtures were mostly incandescent, but when they are using LED, they modify them now and they use their bulbs. The electrics put their own bulbs in, and then they can change the colors slightly.
The
Yes.
dining hall was all LED in the ceiling. Those the dome but the domes that you see all have we built. It's actually I think it's what do we use a bowl on the bottom that we
Yeah, it ended up being
what
a
we
metal
painted?
bowl.
Yeah, a metal bowl with a threaded rod through, which again, Patty's assistant decorator, Greg, was key on this, finding all the different options and components and then testing them. We built one of those domes, which is 4 feet in diameter. It's very big. Yeah, because they're way up there. So then we got this metal bowl, put a threaded rod on it, and then put the LED. I think there's 2 LED fixtures inside it that bounce up into the white of the dome. And then Tom, our gaffer, was also key in figuring out, exactly how low to hang the light within the dome so that the shadow doesn't hit the ceiling. It just perfectly hits the circle of the fixture. So yeah, we made a component and then that gave them complete control over, dimmability, and they had each of them on a board so that they could bring up or down different areas. Our DP was very happy about that ceiling.
You were talking about the plum color. That is such a difficult color. When I first saw that in the opening scenes, I thought, oh, the poor costume designer. How could they possibly? How many trials and errors did they have to go before they got a plum that would read as a plum on camera? Because purples are notorious, as you know, purples are notorious for not showing up true color.
Or also for being really ugly. I mean, some purple are so horrible. I know that they did so much testing for that, for sure.
Mike was kind of initially freaking out, not just about the plum, but how many different colors were going to be in the scenes, because you've got the teal, you've got the green, you've got the plum, there's the pinks. It ends up being, this rainbow of colors, but the plum is the one that is in the biggest volume, I think, in most of our scenes. We did I think we ended up doing 4 separate color camera tests. And actually the plum wasn't the hardest color. The hardest color was the green. Green, which shows up in the ball, was very hard to retain in warm light or in cool light. Because I guess it's the perfect combination of yellow and blue. So it either warms into like a brown or it cools into a blue, and it's hard to keep the greenness of the green. But the color as well has so much to do with the texture of the fabric, because color is just light, really. So what we're looking at is how the light interacts with the material and what color that reads as. So in Gilead, we wanted the fabrics to be very organic feeling and all natural cottons and wools. And those really pull in the light and don't reflect light. So at night, you completely lose the color. So we did play with like some silks and other fabrics as well that you get a bit more sheen out of, because then at night you get a bit more reflectivity. But it was definitely one of the biggest challenges on the show, was just figuring out how those colors would interact.
But I liked how she had a range, which was nice. So there was a pale, almost mauve color, and then there was a warmer purple that was deeper. There were several tones that she was using. So that was nice to have the combination. It really helped.
There are elements of the teal throughout the show, right? Patty, did you buy all those things and paint them? The pottery and the lamps in the school?
No, actually, we were really lucky. A lot of the pottery, we found a source and it was already a perfect color. We did paint a little bit of it. The
We
lamps,
painted those lamps.
we did find these beautiful lamps and then we painted those. But yeah, we had to work with the palette. We really were working with what was going to look really beautiful with the purple. And then so the green later, and then the white of the Pearl Girl could be anything, but you have to find colors. And Martha had also figured that out early on, that she wanted to go with some blues and greens, but they had to be more vibrant than the colors that were in the Handmaids, because it should feel it. I mean, the Handmaids, it was very dreary and sad, and this wasn't supposed to feel like that. So there was this whole thing about these colors, and then we had a very specific palette.
I think in the dining hall, I hadn't thought about having green in there. We had a lot of green elements in other areas of the school, and in a way, green was this aspirational color for the girls, because once they graduate, they go to this green outfit just before they go into their teal outfit. So it's sort of like an aspirational color for them. And I hadn't thought about putting it in the dining room. Patty came in with those beautiful vases and put them on the mantle. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Okay, we need actually some more of this in here. So then we painted the lamps, and then one of the great shots of the overhead, the first lunch that you see them having, and they've got this little salad on their plate, and it's that perfect pop of green in the sea of plum. And I think the eye needs a bit of a respite from the plum, and that green provided that nice kind of palette cleanser against the plum.
So with the swing sets and going out of the world of Gilead, that must have been quite a treat, and also a shock to a degree, right? After having such control. What was your favorite set outside Gilead?
We didn't do that many. I mean, we had a backlot, but Martha hated the backlot so much. So I can't say that I liked it, because it was really a complicated place to try to make that work. It ended up working really beautifully, but we went on location. I'm trying to think. Probably the shop, right? There was the
The flower shop was nice. That was also a Gilead. That was also a Gilead world. There was the Toronto episode where we see Daisy before she comes to Gilead.
That was fun, and the vintage store.
The vintage store was great. Yeah.
So we got to show things that normal people have. Like they got to have TV, music, and everything like that, and color, lots of color. We didn't have to worry about. We didn't have the palette restrictions that we have in Gilead.
Yeah, and we kind of leaned into as much chaos as well as we could, just to contrast that, and as much text as we could do. Like Justin's bedroom was fun. That's Daisy's boyfriend's bedroom. Patty found a bunch of band posters for him. We had our graphics team make some as well. And actually, Patty's kids' band poster is in there. shout out to them.
BB and Una, yay!
Yeah. So you do have a back lot. Is it connected to your stage? No.
That would be a dream. It's very hard to shoot Gilead street scenes because you need so much control. It's kind of like doing a period show where, you have to get rid of everything and change all the signage and all the cars, and because it's such a different world, you can't have any text anywhere. And yeah, in this one particular scene, it was the bus crash in episode 2, where we're driving through, and so we needed, a lot of geography and control to get that bus driving, and then an SUV comes and crashes with them. But, luckily the way that Mike decided the scene wanted to be very much from the point of view of the girls in the bus, so you're kind of enclosed in it. The drama of it takes place by just seeing snippets of what's happening and not really knowing what's going on. So we shot it on in this existing backlot set that is kind of falling apart. Like it's crumbling. It wasn't really designed to be a long-lasting backlot, so it's brick was like peeling off of buildings, and we went in and tried to fix it up, and I was just having a nightmare. I didn't think it looked very good, but luckily we didn't. What we saw was fine.
The camera didn't dwell on it.
No, the camera was not walking down the street with anyone,
Right.
so that we were okay. Yeah, but yeah, it's one of the things that is nice to do, and we did a lot on Handmaids, of these sort of street scenes, because it really does show the difference between a typical American town and what Gilead had turned it into. But we haven't done a ton of that yet on Testaments. I think another favorite set that I haven't talked about in any interviews with anybody, because it comes up later in the series, and not knowing when something might air, is Becca's house. It's particularly with the set deck, like what Patty did in there with some of the pieces and the way it all came together. I was very happy with that set.
Because that was a repurposed house. Part of it was a house from the Handmaids that Martha repurposed the build and created a few different, like she rearranged everything, but it was just a great way to use a set. And then it also had all those details of how these people live in Gilead. So that was nice.
It was a bit of a difficult design, one of the more difficult places to design, because we started with a dentist's reception area and our dentist's room. And then it's almost like the process was not done as a whole, because we started with the dentist and the idea that he has a home practice. So we had the staircase leading to their private bedrooms, the door leading to what would be their living space, and then we had his dental room. But then along the process, we wanted to get a exterior for a later episode, so we chose that with a different director. And the style of the exterior was Victorian. The interior that we'd used, because we were, trying to be efficient about our money, and we have this beautiful staircase, so we reused that from Handmaid's Tale. But the style of that was much more Romanesque, so it had a very chunky kind of quality to it. And then even just with the layout, trying to figure out how to make the exterior match, what we had already established. But I managed to make it all work. And we built this parlor with a dining room and a little sunroom that matches the back of the location house. And then I brought in like fretwork detail for some of the door openings or the space between the rooms. And that kind of tied into both the chunkier aesthetic of what we had in the staircase, but also that sort of gingerbreading on the outside of the Victorian house. So to try to marry the two together. And again, like I think just in the set deck, Patty found these beautiful big cabinets that just brought in some dark details, and it just it all sort of came together in the end. But it was a difficult and long process because it happened with different directors and different episodes.
Well, congratulations, because I thought it was a set. I mean, I thought it was a location. I thought with that gorgeous exterior, I thought it was that you did the whole thing on location, except for the bathroom. I figured
We fooled you.
you had to build the bathroom there. So
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Earlier, Martha, you mentioned the hallway of mirrors. That was a set, or was that a location?
That was built connected to the bedroom with this idea that you can move between the spaces. And actually, it was this hallway of mirrors was designed for the first episode, the first scene where Agnes is being dressed by all her Marthas, and they're bringing her plum costume. And so, we wanted to create a space where there could be a lot of busyness, a lot of women moving around and acting as her caretaker. And then that space got used by other directors as well for these moments where Agnes is sort of realizing something about herself, and you see that repeated image of her in the Hall of Mirrors.
Obviously, they were all real doors, correct?
Yeah, so one of those sets of doors we actually made as a one-way mirror so that you could put a camera behind and look directly to Agnes looking at herself. We finished the inside of, I think, 2 of those closet spaces, and Patty dressed that with, her little sweaters and tights and shoes and costumes, provided some dresses for us. And all of those could be made into closets. We just didn't need to. So it was, I think there's a lot of different ways to stage that with the camera. And with those all being doors, we can easily take them off and they can tuck in behind any of them, which they did.
Well, thank you, ladies. This was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the show much more than I thought, although I found it a little spooky. And it's rather frightening about the control and but I also think that it's the power of women. That does come through for me, that they're not easy to push over as they think, as the men think. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you.
Happy to talk with you.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.